Leaderonomics presents the spookiest psychology-based educational show on the internet. Psyched, Spooktober edition.
Welcome everybody, and this is our last episode of the year, unless we have something special coming on in December, who knows. But yes, we are at the last one and we have exciting guests and a very exciting topic. So for those who are tuning in again, welcome back. We are going to end our season 1 of Psyched. The Spooktober season is going to be ending very soon. So if I could just invite my guests here today, we have two guests. We have Ang Hui Ming, who is our co-founder of Leaderonomics, and also somebody who has gone through a lot of different organizations and experiences. And we also have Matt. Okay, so Matt is our producer and he's here to spark a bit of fire between all of us with this interesting topic. All right, so today we're going to talk about whether organizations should celebrate Halloween. Okay, so that is a tough question, and it's interesting because maybe Hui Ming, maybe Matt, have you guys seen organizations celebrate Halloween a lot? Like online, they post stuff on LinkedIn.
Maybe not so much in Malaysia, Andrea, but I think overseas, yes, maybe it's probably one of the one of the most not celebrated, but there are many events surrounding Halloween because it seems fun. Yeah.
It seems fun. Okay.
But in Malaysia, I don't know. It doesn't sound like something that we often see. Yeah.
Matt, what about you? Have you seen people celebrating this in companies?
Yeah, the other day I was discussing with my friends about how my generation. So sorry today I've been alienating Andrea. I should say our generation, Andrea. Andrea and my generation have been very quick to kind of embrace it a little bit more. So yeah, we've had in college, because I belong to an American degree program, so it was more prominently celebrated there. And I've noticed now some companies are bringing it over here. And with the timely release of Squid Game, right? It's a little Halloweeny, so it's it's around. I see it more often, especially among our peer group, Andrea.
Our peer group. I like how you say you're
terrible,
including
right?
me, the generation.
Now you're excluding us, right? Yeah.
Oh man.
But I think one interesting fact, right? I mean, you asked, right, whether it's very highly celebrated. I don't know, but when you asked me this question, of course, I googled a bit here and there, and I found that in America, right, their candy sales during Halloween is 1/4 of their annual sales. So it's spiking, and that itself indicates to you how much is celebrated, whether it's in the workplace or whether it's home or communities or in schools, right? It's probably one of the big festivals that's celebrated with lots of commercialness around it as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, over the years when I was looking at Halloween, it's maybe 5 years ago, not really, especially in Malaysia and our Asian sort of countries, not really. But over the last 5 years coming up to today, it's everywhere, right? People dress up, people have parties, in organizations, especially when you're working with an international team, they are most likely to celebrate it, right? And I think the key thing is that a lot of people don't know where or what Halloween actually is. Do you guys know what Halloween is?
Have an impression?
Okay.
It's a time where we eat a lot of chocolate. That's to me. Yeah.
So we choose to look at the fun stuff, right? But not the origins of it, where we understand there's some things behind it. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting, right? Because we usually look at festivals as either very fun or it's a time for gathering and socializing basically. But we have a video here, very short one for everybody to watch, and we're gonna show you and enlighten you what Halloween is all about. So at least that's something you can learn from today's episode. So let's have a look at this video.
When most people think of Halloween, they think of trick-or-treating, parades, bobbing for apples, and other family-friendly activities. But bet you didn't know the true story behind the ancient origins of Halloween. It all goes back some 2,000 years to the ancient Celtic festival known as Samhain, celebrated on November 1st. On the night before Samhain, people believed that the dead returned as ghosts. They would leave food and wine on their doorsteps to keep roaming spirits at bay, and wear masks when they left the house so they would be mistaken for fellow ghosts. The Christian church turned Samhain into All Saints' Day, or All Hallows, in the 8th century. The night before became All Hallows' Eve, later shortened to Halloween. You've heard of trick-or-treating on Halloween, but what about souling or guising? All three of these traditions originated in medieval Britain. On All Souls Day, November 2nd, the needy would beg for pastries known as soul cakes. In return, they would pray for people's dead relatives. This was called souling. In the medieval Halloween tradition of guising, young people would dress up in costume and accept food, wine, money, and other offerings in exchange for singing, reciting poetry, or telling jokes. In 19th century America, Irish and Scottish immigrants revived these old traditions. The result was trick-or-treating. At first, it was much more about the tricks, in the form of pranks and hijinks, than the treats. It wasn't until the 1950s that the custom took on its current family-friendly, kid-centered form. Today, Halloween is big business, with US consumers spending more than $2.5 billion on costumes annually. Add in the candy, and it's estimated that Americans spend up to $6 billion on Halloween each year, making it the second most commercial holiday after Christmas. So whether you're a fan of tricks, treats, or trivia, there's a bit of Halloween history.
We bet you didn't know!
Okay, so I have a very, very cheeky question. Let's say we are in the States or somewhere like far, far away, not in Malaysia or Asian climate. And if you're a kid, maybe like a 12-year-old kid, would you go out trick or treating? You say yes. I think Matthew, yes, because you'll take all
Yeah, the
the
kid here.
candies.
Yeah, the kid here. The kid.
I think I think it's appropriate at a certain age. I think like once you're like 18, right, then it's kind of a little weird already when you're going out around. But I think I would like to be the person who like opens the door and does something scary.
Okay.
Yeah.
Opens the door and does something scary. Wow.
And then gives
okay,
the
so-
candy lah. Sorry, I failed to provide context. I will open the door, do something scary, and then give the candy. Yeah.
Okay.
If I
Alright,
had
I
kids,
think-
if I had kids, I probably would also allow, because I mean it's part of their culture and it's to learn about why they do it. But what I would object is I would probably ask to to wear something that's not so scary. I don't know why somehow the scary costumes and witches or zombies is not something that I want to impart on the kids. So it's like you can go for it, enjoy the culture, but I would prefer that if you wore something not maybe the opposite. Because it's
Like a
costumes,
bunny.
right? Costumes can be anything, so it
Yeah.
doesn't have to be what I call the scary ones. Although that's
Go
what
as-
attracts
go-
the kids, right? It's the scary ones, right? Yeah.
Go as Elsa. Everyone loves Elsa. Can't go wrong.
My
Yeah,
gosh,
yeah. So
yeah.
it's taken a twist, right? It can be costumes of anything, doesn't have to be those scary costumes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's very interesting, right? Because it's ultimately like when you see how people celebrate it, it's a lot to do with the fun. It's something to go out and do, have fun, collect candies. But then when I was watching the video, I didn't know they collect wine. So I was like, okay lah, maybe the older ones we can go and collect wine. That'll be quite funny. Yeah. And I think there's a comment coming in. I think Esther says that, will we be having a special guising session from the host and guest that comes in a form of singing or reciting poetry of sorts? I'm not sure. Maybe you will at the end. Who knows? Right.
From
So
Andrea lah. after we go, Andrea will be reciting some.
that would be
poetry.
quite horrific, but okay, so I'm going to move into a few more questions, and this is a question for the crowd while we move on to the second segment. The first question would be, do you think organizations should be more thoughtful in the celebrations they choose to do? So if yes, why? If no, why? So for example, do organizations take into context of what the celebration is? Or is it more for having fun, social gatherings, just something to celebrate together without knowing the context? What is your stand on this, right? What do you think organizations should do? So yeah, please feel free to put it in the comments. We'd love to hear what you think. What about maybe Hui Ming? What do you think about this?
Good question. I of course I think that organizations should put some thought in which celebrations to do. But also not to get too hung up and too serious around it. So I know that a lot of organizations have what we call engagement teams. Under HR, there's teams that focuses just purely on engagement and making sure that all employees feel belonged and included in the organization, and that comes about in certain celebrations, right? And celebrations and what to celebrate probably the thought process has to go into it to make sure that it's also not. I think there are a few things to consider, right? Some things is that what celebrations do you actually do in the organizations that firstly doesn't it must be aligned with your values of the organization, right? The principles of the organization. So if any celebrations probably contradict or doesn't promote the values of the organization, then probably those are things that you may reconsider to have it, or have it as a social gathering external of the workplace rather than to make it into a workplace event or festival. I guess the question also always arises when engagement teams or HR wants to consider what festivals to run, is the question of would any of this be what we call offensive in the nature, offensive or goes against certain known traditions or known boundaries, whether to have it or not. And if you choose to have it, then to make sure to maybe engage and to ask those groups of minorities that may be offended as to would they be okay as well if it's run. So having all those discussions and dialogues, I think, is more important than to decide yes no kind of thing. The dialogues are the one that spurs understanding between groups or different diverse groups in the organization. It's the dialogues that makes a difference.
Yeah, and I totally agree, right? As simple as asking and getting that answer and having that chat. But what about you, Matt? Do you think that they should be thoughtful or just have fun? What do you think?
I think it's very tricky when it comes to the workplace. I think if somebody invites you to their home for a cultural celebration or some kind of celebration, there's always that option to say no. But when it's at work, right, then you're like unless you're willing, unless you're willing to take leave that day and not show up, which not many people are, then it's kind of like you're in that box, like, am I forced to do it? So I just think people should be free. Like if they don't want to participate, they don't. And but if you wanna, then you're in, that's kind of thing. And I think everybody should respect like everybody's comfort levels. So as much as we honor certain people's culture, we also honor other people's them not wanting to really be a part of it, because different people have different sensitivities to it. So I think if everybody has that understanding, then I think it can be a very fun and meaningful thing.
Yeah, and it's very interesting. Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Hui.
Yeah, just thinking, also hearing what you're saying. So Andrea, I was just thinking, for example, right, Leaderonomics, right? That we also have what we call a lot of youth initiatives with the kids, with the primary and youth, right? So something like, let's say, Halloween as a celebration. Again, the intention the intention of maybe having a festival around Halloween could be for fun. Right, it could be just for fun. People come together, they have fun playing tricks on people, or even giving treats. The other opposite, but I can also imagine that there will be opinions externally from parents. Yeah, those parents who believe that it's not right to maybe celebrate things that celebrate the dead, or and things like that, or the soul. It also can come from there, and also the question do we do it? And if we do it, how do we actually be able to explain to all the parents of youth who say that we don't think it's good to actually promote this, or to actually expose the kids to celebrations like that, but maybe more positive celebrations and all that. So it's considerations as to our actions, right, as an organization. Would it impede other people, or would it, let's say, cause more offense to certain groups of people? So we have to consider all that and then to make a call.
Yeah, and I find that very interesting, because what I've seen most HR or workplaces that do celebrate like Halloween or things that are not very, they're very popular, but when you look into origins, you're like, I never knew it's these kind of things. They dial down on that origin, right? They dial down on the purpose of the celebration. They use it as, this is for a social gathering where we dress up and have fun. So they put it very straightforward and very plainly, that they don't celebrate across for the reason of the origin, or respecting the date and stuff. They don't do it. They just take the fun and the socializing kind of element, and it makes it easier to be accepted across the organization, rather than like imposing something. And I think there's a lot of comments coming in. Let me read a few. This is really funny. So Husni, he said that every day is like Halloween in the office. There's always spooky emails, meetings, presentations. That's super funny. Yeah, and then people always ghost us. So Halloween is pretty much every day. And I think Nandini, she says that in a multicultural environment like Malaysia, I think it's nice to recognize and celebrate all occasions. People should be given a choice to participate and not be forced into it. There should be a method to the madness and value opinion of people involved. Yeah, and I think this is something that we talked about, right? That conversation, that sensitivity towards people, whether it's a minority or majority, is quite important. I think I have a question from Sashi. He says that I mentioned about how a celebration of Halloween is often about the element of fun and perhaps even to feel good as you get taken away from work a little. Do you think that workplace cultures are having to consider people's feeling more now? This one I pass to Hui Ming, okay? What do you think?
I think my direct answer is definitely 100% yes, in the sense that, the word inclusion, right? Diversity, you want to promote diversity, also comes with inclusion, the other term around it, right? Is
Yes.
that how do you help and enable people to feel belonged and also consider and to respect? I think that considering other people's feelings comes back to the value of respect. How do we respect different opinions, different preferences in the organization? But I still stop at respect. I'll stop at respect because we cannot fulfill everybody's wants or preference. So at the end of the day, it's about, again, I would say it's about having the conversations and to be able to actually explain reasons behind why we do certain things. In fact, even things like Halloween, right? You can say that we had the fun element and we promote the fun element. But I think will be even better, to be honest, if we talk about really, really diversity and inclusion, is to really go down to the origins and to be able to even have questions on that and to ask people, hey, why was it even celebrated in the first place? And to learn about cultures. Because Halloween definitely came from some ethnic group, some religion somewhere or whatever that basically has a cultural aspect and also an education aspect to it. If we can learn from the festival, why not, right? And then when we learn and our minds are open, then the acceptance of it comes even wider. So it's not about I agree with this festival, I disagree with the festival, I will celebrate, I won't celebrate. It's about understanding why the festival was there and understanding why some cultures celebrate it, understanding what's the rationale behind or the purpose or the origins of it. Actually widens people's mind. And that's real, to me, that's real diversity in thinking. That's really where I think it's you start to include an understanding of people's cultures and why they do certain things and their upbringing or their background. So that's probably where I think it's more important. When we say consider people's feelings, it's actually respecting, understanding. To respect, you have to come with understanding.
Yeah, I think that's excellent, right? And I mean, for Matthew and I, we're in the same generation. Like, people always complain about our generation because they say that we are pretty entitled and that everything people say is offensive to us, right? Like how we identify ourselves as certain things and stuff like that's very important to us. But in the workplace, if I were to ask Matthew, if you are not in Leaderonomics, is somewhere else, and you had to voice out that you're not comfortable with celebrating Halloween, how do you do that?
I would just say, hey, you guys go ahead. I'm not gonna join on this one. And then if they ask me why, then I'll be like, yeah, it's just not something I'm very comfortable with.
Okay.
Is that a good enough demonstration?
That's super straightforward and I love it, right? That's pretty
Yeah.
straightforward. And there are a few more comments as well. I think Shawina asked, some pranks can be pretty hurtful or insulting. What's the fine line between being funny and offensive? So this one, for those who don't know, Hui Ming is actually a master pranker. So so let's pass this question to her as well. How do you decide what's being funny and what's being offensive?
But that's a tough question because I don't know.
You only know after the fact, right?
Yes, correct. I think you know after the fact. Of course, before we play the prank, we can of course at least understand the person we are pranking to also know whether there are certain things that, I mean, of course, you have race, religion, things like that. You can really consider what can be done and what cannot be done. So there are very clear boundaries, what we can't do and what we can do, right? In that sense. But then there's also the gray boundaries that we don't know, and those are things that happens in people's lives. So I'll be honest with you, I played pranks on my teachers before when I was a kid, and that got the teacher crying. Terribly crying, and of course I landed up in the principal's office, right? And that's because they didn't know the experience that she had. And one of the experiences actually caused for a prank with a rat caused a really huge trauma because there was a history, or there was a baggage that my teacher had. But you wouldn't know, right? It was an innocent prank. So I don't have the right answer because I think when it comes to clear boundaries, we don't step over the boundaries. But the gray ones is the one that we cannot anticipate, and sometimes that is a risk factor. So maybe just don't go overboard in the pranks. That's all I can say.
Yeah.
So I disagree a little bit.
Pranks.
I disagree a little bit because I feel like people always say it's like a line. There's a line. I feel like it's quite clear. I feel like if you have to, because pranks can be like a tool to humiliate, or actually it also could be part of your love language, right? So if you know, like at the end of the day, you have to ask yourself, like, this thing that I'm doing, like if I put like a ghost pepper in Andrea's lunch, or like, right, or I post like I post her that time she failed some grade somewhere all over the office, right? That's like two very, very different. Like what is the byproduct of the whole thing? So I think it's like very, very clear. Like, on the Leaderonomics YouTube page, there's a lot of prank videos. And you can see like a lot of those. You can see there's a lot of like, it's funny, but there's a lot of love expressed. It's to show like, hey, we kacau you because we love you, kind of thing, So it's for me, I think it's quite easy to.
I think what you're speaking about is the intention, right? So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so that's the intention is of course the basic foundation, right? The problem is you don't know the outcome of the intention. Intention could be love, could be nice also.
Yeah.
But sometimes the outcome, not because of the intention to bully somebody or whatever. Unfortunately, the person's life experience could cause that even the intention to be misconstrued as offensive also. Yeah.
But to be honest, if you used the rat, I also would have cried, to be honest. Yeah.
Many found it funny, right? So see, a lot majority found it funny, but to the one or two persons, it was so offensive.
Yeah, and I think I really agree, right? Intention is important, but the outcome, usually pranks, you won't really know until the end of it, right? The person's reaction will tell you whether it was offensive or hurtful. And for me, the next part is to apologize and never do it again, right? That's pretty much it, and to repair the relationship. Unless you knew that this person was vulnerable about something, like your teacher, if you knew that she was vulnerable about rats and then you still do a prank on rats, then that's completely wrong, right? Yeah.
And actually, imagine, for example, right? Imagine Valentine's Day, right? Imagine just a simple thing as Valentine's Day, right? The intention of everybody is to share the love, treat chocolates or whatever. But even that, some people can get offended.
Yeah, correct.
Because what if they had baggages and it gave them a flower and say, from a girl to a girl, what do you mean by that? You mean that no one would celebrate with me, and that's why you have to come and give me general chocolates and flowers from the company.
Yeah.
So we cannot, good intentions.
I mean, in our community, especially now modern day, right? Anything can be a trigger. Right? Anything can be a trigger, especially if you really don't know what's happening with the other person's life completely. It's very hard to gauge. And at the end of the day, I think it comes down to still that conversation after, right? If the person was hurt or offended, then repair the relationship. Yeah.
I think the other thing I just triggered my mind now is this thing, because today we live in a very socially open community.
Yeah.
I honestly think that when it comes to things, pranks or whatever that you do in organization, or even nice things, the question is, what do you post and what do you not post? Because the posting can aggravate a lot of things. It can, I see a lot of organizations use social media to promote things. But what if those people involved in those events don't want it to be promoted or to be socially made available, and sometimes this inconsideration as to post everything that you think is funny or you think it attracts a crowd or attracts people to read can actually be damaging to some people who are actually captured in those videos. I think that's where I would be more cautious about what to post on social media than not. A simple prank could become a case of cyberbullying. A simple prank could cause damage to reputation or credibility, and maybe that's where you need to be very, very careful.
Correct. And once it's online, you pretty much can't take it off, right? I mean, I make it a habit as well personally when I post videos or pictures of my friends or people I take generally. I actually ask them beforehand, like, okay, can I post this on story? Because I feel like
Yeah.
that consent is important. It's their
Yeah.
face, you know what I mean? And it's their
Yeah.
reputation on the line. So that's quite important. Unless
Mm.
we are super close friends that we constantly post about each other, then they want, okay, like a more leeway to like, just post it out of surprise. People like the element as well. And I think I have a few more comments here as well. Fresh Bread says that Matt has a podcast about Halloween coming out soon. Can't wait. Okay, so we shall listen to Matt on Halloween soon. Sashi says the movie Circle 2017, must watch it. It shows how some organizations promote inclusivity and openness, but top management are not excluded from it. Maybe we should watch this. I have not watched this movie. Have you guys watched it before?
Nope,
Yeah.
not seen it.
Okay, cool. So maybe we can watch it sometime soon. And I think Shawina says, Hui Ming, please flex your prankster tricks on me. I'm all open. Okay, so that's permission right there. Shawina,
okay.
are you sure or not? Have you seen what Hui Ming does with pranks?
No, this was fine time to choreograph pranks, but okay.
Okay, so I think we are talking about a lot to do with cultural inclusivity and also diversity. So I have two definitions here to help our audience to understand what's the difference, right? So cultural diversity is also known as multiculturalism. It's a group of diverse individuals from different cultures or societies. And usually, cultural diversity takes into account language, religion, race, sexual orientation, gender, age, and ethnicity. So there's a lot to do with a person's attributes or certain things that they believe or subscribe to. So those are cultural diversity, right? But cultural inclusiveness or inclusivity addresses and supports the needs of people from diverse cultures. So diversity is basically, okay, there's A, B, C, D, E, F, but cultural inclusiveness is saying that we take into account of A, B, C, D, E, F, right? So you support and address the needs of people from diverse cultures and values their unique contribution. It involves ongoing awareness raising, which is what Hui Ming was talking about, right? Awareness raising, teaching and educating what exactly is this culture celebration is about, or what this thing that people believe in is about. So that's awareness raising, where negotiations and compromise may be necessary. I like this quote, or rather this definition a lot, because it says this, right? Where compromise may be necessary. So for example, like Matt says, right, if he's not comfortable with certain celebrations of a certain group of people, he will excuse himself. So for me, that is an acceptable compromise. Not non-acceptable compromise would be like management says, okay, we're gonna have a party celebrating Halloween. Everybody is made compulsory to attend. So you are compromising your belief to attend something that you don't believe in. Now that is not a compromise that is true or right. That's what I think. So these are two definitions that are pretty interesting. And I think this question would be celebrating many diverse celebrations. They usually promote feelings of belonging, diversity, and inclusivity. But is it also possibly a HR gimmick to make diversity visible to others? So, for example, right, on LinkedIn or on your web page and stuff like that, people always show like, oh, we celebrate Diwali, we celebrate Christmas, we celebrate Chinese New Year, is to show that kind of diversity in the organization. So the question is, does HR also use this as a gimmick to attract talent? Yeah, that's my question. What do you guys think? Tough question.
The word gimmick lah. The word gimmick lah. I'm pretty sure that I'm not saying pretty sure lah. I think definitely when organizations post these photos, partially it could be that people are just excited about it, right? It's really fun to actually what we call talk about fun things that happen in the organization. I think on the HR front, it's probably also I call it a tool lah. It's probably also partially a marketing tool to actually shout out to outside people as to what is the culture in this organization. right? I don't think it's done in the intention of exploitation or like it's like a bad gimmick. It's really just done in the spirit. It depends on the spirit of how it's done. And I believe if it's truly the culture in organization that we do celebrate diversity, and then you post these photos out there or videos, I think it's okay. But if the culture of the organization is the total opposite, where really there is no acceptance of differences or different thinking or even different opinions or even culture, no respect there, and then you use it. I mean, you run this session, take photo, and everybody's forced to smile, and then you post it. Then that becomes very very promotional and very gimmicky, But it was a true nature, a true reflection of what the organization is. I think that's just sharing of that's just sharing actually, sharing of what it is like to be part of this organization. So it really depends on whether it's a true reflection or it's a
Staged.
facade. Yeah.
Yeah. And what about Matt? I mean, like, if you were to apply for a job, right, in an organization, does these kind of things make you want to apply to this kind of organization? For example, you see them celebrating a lot of things, like even birthdays, right? Some organizations celebrate people's birthdays all the time. So does that make you feel like, oh, this culture of this organization is very welcoming, they care about you, that kind of feeling? Do you feel that way?
Yeah, I think it really it depends on the context. I feel I think authenticity, like we said earlier, is like something that we look for. So it's not really so much about whether or not, but like what do we do every other day that there is not a celebration. That is what kind of makes the when we're having a celebration kind of meaningful. Or yeah. So over here, if we try to invoke a lot of fun things on a weekly basis, using happily or things like that, so that when we do maybe something fun, then it goes like, yeah, because that's just kind of the people that we are. We do embrace this on a weekly or a monthly basis, whether or not that's like a cultural or some official kind of celebration. So it feels legit, and even when it comes to birthdays, like if I know that my supervisor doesn't care about me, and then he wishes me happy birthday, I hope you have a great day. Even that itself, without a cake or a celebration, that is so sus in a sense. So yeah, so it's like if I know that I'm in a place where people are like legitimately concerned about my well-being, and they want me to grow and learn as while I'm doing my job, then when they wish me or they come with a cake or somebody at work gives me a present, then it means a lot more. And so yeah, so it's not so much about what we celebrate as to the day-to-day culture, and that's what makes the celebrations legitimate to me.
I think that's a very good indicator as well, right? Sort of sussing out the real intentions of it, right? Rather than just have like almost a hundred over 200 people posting a happy birthday on your Facebook wall, right? That's how we felt last time.
Yeah.
And I have a question for the crowd, while we move on to the almost at the end of our episode. I think this question is quite interesting. So feel free to comment and let us know what you think. What are some celebrations your organization or you've seen organizations celebrate that is against your beliefs? Okay, so just drop me a comment, anything at all you've seen or you've experienced, anything that has sort of gone against your beliefs. So drop it in the comment section. For me, I will go first. I don't think I have any, to be honest. Like all the I celebrate everything in Malaysia. So Deepavali, Chinese New Year, Raya, Christmas, Easter, what else? Halloween, everything also I celebrate in Malaysia. What about you, Matt? Have you seen any celebrations that is sort of against your beliefs that is celebrated in an organization or a company?
Or in our organization. I was just going to say that I don't believe in Boxing Day because I should be able to open my presents on Christmas whenever I want to.
Okay.
Nobody should tell me, is it to the 26th? I don't know. I think in the new times, I think there are a lot more different kind of celebrations that are coming up that I think, like, for example, some cultural things may be kind of tied to like a religion or something like that. And me being from another region, I think sometimes maybe I feel like I don't really want to participate because I feel like there's a compromise of like my own religion's beliefs. So I think when it comes to that, and then vice versa, maybe they feel that way if I invite them to a Christmas party or something like that. So I always think that whenever someone extends an invitation to me to maybe a festival or whatever, I don't feel comfortable. I try not to take offense, and I try to remember, like, when they invite you to these things, it kind of also means, like, to them you are someone special, and they want you to be there to celebrate with them, and I think you can. I've met some people where they don't handle it very well, and they go, "How dare you? Don't you know this is like my?" But I think it's very important to be very nice about it, because if they want you to participate in something that's sacred to them, it shows that you are kind of like a very important part of their life. So I've learned over time to go like, "Hey man, I really appreciate that invitation, but it's something that I'm not personally very comfortable with." And if I were to receive like a similar response from someone, if I invited them for like some celebration, then I'm also learning not to take offense, and to indicate to them that, hey, I'm not trying to get you on board or anything, but I just want you to know that you mean something to me, and that's why I want you to be a part of this. So yeah.
I think that's great, right? Understanding where people are coming from, the intention.
Mhm.
I think that's amazing. Hui Ming, what about you? Anything that you've seen that is sort of against your beliefs, or
I don't recall any major ones that I think also I'm also quite open-minded. But at the same time, I also know that I think even our company had Halloween, a very big Halloween do last 2 years ago or something like
Yeah.
that. While I don't believe in it, or I don't really promote that, it's like I said, like, I may not accept it as a celebration or whatever. However, I also respected the intent of it was not about, it's not about that celebration. It's not about the original intent. The intent behind it was actually to promote fun in the organization. So to say that it may have been against my personal beliefs, but it's like it wasn't really not a big fuss to make, in the sense that I think the intent was not bad. It wasn't a bad intent, it was a good intent, so it was okay.
Mm. Okay. Yeah, I think that's great. I think as we are coming to the end of the episode, I think at the end of the day, the question is, what is the purpose for organizations to celebrate anything? Right? Of course, we talk about diversity, we talk about, feeling that kind of belonging, that kind of socialization, social gatherings. But is there any other benefit to organizations celebrating festivals and, things like this?
Maybe
What do
I
you
can
guys
also
think?
answer some of it. In Leaderonomics, when we, especially the major festivals, I think when we do celebrate that in a bigger manner, the major festivals, I liked how the past HR did it. I've seen when they do the Chinese Yisang, they will explain the behinds and why
Yeah.
this thing is done. I think when we come together for Buka Puasa and all that as an organization, I think there's a nice respect also as to why our friends and colleagues, the Muslim colleagues, do that. So I feel that it's not just I think the fun element is like a given now. The only reason you would do that is really the social gathering and all that. But it'll be really, it's more important, I think, if there was learning behind it. Because only when we learn about it and you be curious about the festival and why people celebrate the way they do, why do they take the dates before they, you start going to meals and all that. And the learning is the one that I think kind of cultivates curiosity, cultivates open-mindedness and thinking, and even understanding our colleagues better. So the promote, it's not about the social gatherings, tea or whatever. I think it promotes understanding. It promotes empathy in organization. It promotes then what we call collaboration and rapport building and the bonding that we have with our fellow colleagues. I think that's where it's the benefit comes from that, that post-event, post-activities, people have better understand each other, and then we can work better together as well. So that's really the benefit of it.
Yeah. Matt, what about you? What do you think?
Yeah, I think the like it was said before, I think the bonding part of it is like a really like beneficial part of it. It's not so much like, you know what we are doing. It doesn't so much matter as much as like us doing it together and getting it done. And but that also can be achieved through a lot of things. Like, it doesn't have to be like cultural celebrations. It could be sports. It could be outside activities. It could be department bowling night or whatever you want to, what you want to call it. So it's not, but I think in terms of like the cultural part, I think for me, a lot of people have a lot of opinions about things without knowing. And I think when you within the company, when you have these things, I think it's also a really good time to get educated about it, and you can ask people who have been celebrating certain things for their whole life, what is actually the whole thing behind this, other than it's a public holiday and there's decorations up in the mall. Why do we do this? Why do we observe this? What's the significance of it? And then after that, you can have a more holistic opinion, and it comes from a source that has some experience. So for me, I've chosen to take it like that, and I think, at the end of the day, you don't have to believe or agree with what they do, but at least you have like a better understanding. Here's why, this certain group of people celebrates this or has this thing, and you kind of respect it, in a sense.
And I really agree with all of that. And coming from a psychology background, not to give you some psychology knowledge, right? So, for example, people tend to have certain stigmas or stereotypes because they are part of a group, right? Our social conforming kind of identity. So, when we start to open up that kind of opportunity to mingle, to understand, to respect, to learn about other people's culture, some part of us begin to identify with them as well, right? So that really breaks the whole cycle of stigma and stereotype eventually, because when you go out of your organizations, you're able to see, for example, somebody of a different race or religion slightly more open, and that's what inclusivity is supposed to bring about, right? That diverse understanding and acceptance and respect, towards the people, rather than a certain trait or a certain thing that they believe in. It is towards the people that has these traits, if that makes any sense. So that's pretty interesting, because when I look at things like education, for example, right, we've had this debate as well on whether secular schools or rather certain specific language schools should be taken out of the system completely, right? Because you're surrounded by only a group of people, you don't have the diversity, and which is why more international schools thrive on these kind of things, because they have so much diverse culture and they introduce that as an awareness or educational purpose, and then people start to open up and learn about people, and when they go out, they are less likely to stereotype against somebody because they understand where certain things are coming from, the origins of certain things, or learning to see intention rather than what they just do. So I think that's very interesting, and I think this is the last question for the crowd. For you, for those who are watching today or watching later, why is workplace diversity important? So this includes things like how we hire, how we structure teams, how do we look at succession planning, who's on top, who's in hierarchy, all these kind of questions mingled into this idea of diversity. Why is workplace diversity important? And I will leave that question to the crowd at the end of the day. But for Matt and Hui Ming, is there any your last thoughts about this topic, and anything else you'd like to share before we finalize our episode today?
I think Andrea, just riding on what you just said, right? I mean, the word stereotype, right? I think that one of the biggest terms today in workplace is this thing about bias. How do we remove unconscious bias from our decisions and the way we look at people and the way we do everything from hiring to performance to promotions and everything? How do we be very careful and conscious to make sure that we don't have this unconscious bias that comes from our upbringing and the mindset that was formed when we were brought up, right? So that's also the part where diversity plays a role and openness of thinking plays a role. I guess just the importance of it in the workplace. I think you're leaving for the crowd to answer, so I'm not sure that you want me to say anything. But
if
it's
you have anything.
basically, I mean, really, that the whole diversity issue, that's more diversity, is actually to foster creativity, to foster more innovation, to foster diversity in thinking, and at the end of the day, it's so that the organization can grow, so that we can serve the customers better, but it's also to make sure that employees within the organization are able to continuously learn and to grow as well in their thinking, in their openness of mindset to embrace new ideas. And basically, it is definitely for just growth and development, whether it's for internal people or even for the customer, even for the organization. I really believe diversity does that in the workplace.
And I think this comment from Sashi is right on, right? A better way to understand your customer or client's needs as well, right? Because you have a lot of perspective and the richness in different cultures. Matt, what about you? Any last thoughts and concluding statements?
Yeah, so I'm very freshly going to be graduated soon, and I was also homeschooled actually. So for me, the reason why it was really really important is because growing up, I wasn't really in a very homogeneous kind of environment. My parents worked with a lot of people that were from everywhere internationally. And when I went to college, I met a lot of people who grew up in more homogenous settings, and they didn't choose that, right? That's just where they were put or where they lived, and nobody kind of really has a say on where. And I think one advantage I found of having like a very diverse group of people is when I saw someone, right, I didn't think of them just based on the media stereotype, which a lot of us tend to do. Like our perception of certain races or certain nationalities is based on movies or what we see in the news. But then when you've met them, there's so much beyond that, and sometimes it's very beautiful things that they don't tell you on the news, or they don't tell you because everyone is portrayed in their own way. So I think coming to college, it was really nice because I didn't have that. These people are like that. These people are like that, and you're more willing to work with everyone, and there are more opportunities to be had when you're more open to like, okay, I'm anybody as long as you're willing to work. Let's do something together. So I feel like having that growing up, and even now in our workplace, we have a lot of different kind of people, and it's really open. It opens you up to like, hey man, these are so many possibilities, so many perspectives, just then that one that you have just because you grew up a certain way. So yeah, I think it's really important.
Okay. All right, I think that's excellent for both Hui Ming and Matthew. Thank you so much for joining us. I think we have learned a lot about each other as well as colleagues, and the way we think about certain things. I think we are on the right track with the way we think accordingly to our values. I think that's lovely. And I think at the end of the day, if to answer the question of today's episode, which is our last Psyched episode of the year, yes, should organizations celebrate Halloween or other festivals? In fact, the answer is pretty simple. Start having conversations, right? Start asking the people in your organizations, and ask them their own culture. What do they want? What do they find offensive and stuff like that? I think that's the beginning of where diversity begins. And with that, we want to share with you, as always, this show is brought to you by Budaya, and we want to share with you this platform where we do ask each other questions about certain cultures or things that we don't understand, and we get real-time answers from our colleagues and our friends in the organization. So thank you so much, Mimi and Matt, and thank you for everybody watching. We will see you next year. Drop in your comments what you want to see next year. We will bring in guests and, of course, exciting topics. And with that, let us present to you Budaya.